Hey guys, Grant here. Thanks for tuning in. Essentially what you're watching in this one is me trying to win back my front porch. If you live with a spouse, roommates, anyone really, you probably know what I'm talking about. For me, my wife loves to have decorations on our front porch, really anywhere in the house. And I love my wife, but I hate those decorations. The ones on the front porch are always blowing over in the wind. Sometimes they break. I have to fix them. They're always seasonal, so we have to have extra storage to store the ones that aren't being used. And they're cute. And cute isn't necessarily useful. So my wife was excited about these concrete pots that I'll be turning into a waterfall for the front porch. Hopefully they can stay out for a lot more of the year. They're a little bit easier. I don't have to worry about these bad boys blowing over in the wind or anything like that. Now this first bit that you're watching is me just making the outside frame for pouring the concrete in. I'll end up making a little bit smaller frame for the inside. So you can see we'll pour the pot with the top down, then that top bit will be the bottom and we'll just flip it over. Just made these, so one of the outside frames has some overlapping 2x4s and the other set has the 2x4s right along the edge. That way you can kind of just screw those in and get everything locked down. It wasn't perfectly square by the time I got everything like locked in, but it was close enough that it ended up working out. That inside bit, I just cut down something for that top end. And then since I'm going to have to be able to pull the middle out after the concrete's poured, I only screwed 2 of those edges to that middle piece. And then I just silicone the rest of it together. That way I can pop the 2 sides out and then pop the other edges out and pull that whole middle piece out. Once we had that small middle piece siliconed in and down to the platform, got that top piece overlaid. Obviously they're kind of independent, so just tried to get those as close as we could. Then I ran a thick bead of silicone around that bottom edge before I set that down on the platform, and then just tried to line everything up so each of the walls of the pots were even. You can see it's obviously not perfect here, but I think it'll be close enough. The point of how I built this frame is so hopefully I can use it for all 3 pots or a couple more than that. Just break it apart and then put it back together to pour the next. First things first, we got to test it out for this first pot. The concrete I grabbed was a sand/topping mix for fixes up to like 1 or 2 inches thick. I didn't think I'd like this, so I tried another type of concrete on my second pour. This is actually much better. It doesn't have the larger gravel in it, so it works good for those thinner walls. Mixed this up to a consistency where it poured nicely. Tried to shake out the bubbles as much as I could. Then I just smoothed out the top. Tried to make the edges just a little bit taller than the middle, just because this is going to be the bottom of the pot. I don't want those to rock too much. So we left that for a few days to dry. On this first one, it was probably a little too long. The next few I pulled out while it was still slightly wet, and that worked a bit better. On this first one, the biggest mistake I made was not mixing anything into the concrete. The second biggest thing that I did wrong was breaking this outside frame off first. Should have popped the bottom off first and then popped the inside out and then the outside. I ended up having to use the concrete to pry on a little bit to get the inside out, and obviously putting that much pressure on 1 or 2 inch thick concrete isn't the best option. But at this point, pulling the mold off, it was looking really good. The outside of the pot had poured really nicely, not too many bubbles. Obviously you expect some, but it was looking really good. Flipped it over, started knocking the bottom off, and then as you can see when I started pulling that inside out, I pried on that outside edge because that was really the only way I could get any pressure to pop those off, and ended up breaking that side of the pot, which obviously sucked because you always want it to work out on the first try. You can see that one's busted up really good, obviously not the strongest. So this time around I mixed in this fiberglass, basically just some small strands, essentially doing the same thing as what rebar does in bigger concrete projects, just giving something for the concrete to hold on to. So instead of just being stuck together with little grains of sand essentially, you've got all these fibers in there that make it a lot harder to break and just kind of pulls all sorts of different directions. That fiberglass does use a lot more water in the mix, obviously it makes it a little harder to pour as well. Got that all poured in, got the top troweled out, then gave it some time to dry. This time popping the mold off, popped the bottom off, and then the inside, and then the outside. And you can see that worked a lot better. Obviously the fiberglass made a big difference in the strength of the pot, but I think this one ended up turning out really well and looks about how I was hoping. Then we did that 2 more times. That first pot's on the left there. The second one is with that mix that had extra gravel in it that wasn't the sand/topping already mixed in. So that one turned out a little bit rougher. I didn't love that. But the next step's going to be getting the inside of these sealed. I just used some concrete epoxy. This just comes white, so I got that mixed up. Then I actually added some concrete coloring to this just to get it kind of a darker gray so it's not bright white inside those pots. I think these would hold water just fine how they are. Just wanted to seal it so the water's not soaking into the concrete as much, and hopefully to give it a little extra strength once we get those filled up with water. That first pot you can see has some wood that kind of broke off from the mold down on the bottom. Just got that sealed up really good too, and then got the other 2 pots painted up with that epoxy. Now for the waterfall, I debated either just making an actual flow where you could see everything, or just putting a pipe into the side and having the water run out of the pipe, just so it's a little simpler. I ended up going for just a full like kind of river to the waterfall with everything here. So just trying to pop a few holes in it so it breaks a little easier along those lines. You can see this one with the heavier gravel in it wasn't quite as strong. You can see it pops off, kind of starts breaking in all the places I don't want it to. That one turned out really nice. This third pot though was a lot better, didn't have as much as that gravel in it, quite a bit stronger, so I got a bunch of holes popped in that and just used a chisel to kind of break down, follow those lines, and that one turned out quite a bit better. Now all these pots are obviously exactly the same size, so if I just set them right next to each other on the ground, we're not going to have a whole lot of water falling. To offset these, I'm just going to build a couple of little platforms that are different heights for each one of these. Now, just so you understand, my wife and I just bought a place last year. When we were looking, we found this old home, kind of a fixer-upper that had some land that I really wanted, and then we also found this brand new townhome that my wife really wanted, so of course we met in the middle and bought the new townhome. That being said, with us living in a new townhome, all the new styling, the people that live here, I really only had one option for the base, which is to make it out of pallets, because that's what everyone loves. So if you don't like it, now you understand there was really only one option that I could choose from. It's not my fault. We got those kind of whipped together. Each one of those platforms is just one board taller than the next, so about 4 inches taller or so. You can see we got those whipped out. Those look really nice. Next, I just ran to Lowe's, picked up this $30 pump, 155 gallons per hour, should pump about 2 to 3 feet high, and then this 1/2 inch tubing. So just have to punch a hole in this bottom pot as well as the top one. So we just made that wide enough so I could fish that electrical cord through the side as well as that hose. Next, I just had to adjust that top box a little bit. I'm going to be running the hose as well as the electrical cord through that from the original pot. So we got that popped off. Ran that electrical cord through that just so it's a little bit hidden, and we run towards the back of the porch through that box. And then got that hose ran through as well. Once that was in the bottom pot as well as that top pot, just silicone to the heck out of it on the inside and the outside, just hoping that that's not going to leak. Alright guys, this is about where we're at. So we've got these 2 pots all set up. You can see you've got the hose and the electrical just running through the back side here. Got that hose in the top pot. Not sure how long I want that quite yet, so we've left it right there. I did get these on for the waterfall. They're just some corrugated plastic. They were originally white. I don't really love this look. I just wasn't 100% sure what else to do. So if I come up with something else better, I might replace that. But got those painted with the epoxy too. This second pot, I did actually re-pour. So that's looking a lot better, I think, than that one over there. You can see that's all busted up. But we popped that one out of the mold like 24 hours ago, so just barely got the epoxy on that. Second coat, I guess. And then got this waterfall in. So really just need to figure out a way now that these 3 are connected together to get these to the front porch. And then obviously this one's going to go on this stand right here, but we're almost there. Haven't quite water tested them yet, which I probably should do, but we've just been waiting for the epoxy to dry with everything. So that's where it's at, and it's now almost done. We ended up getting them out to the front porch uneventfully. Like I said, this is the first time I'm actually water testing them. So there ended up being just a couple little holes through that epoxy that just were slowly starting to seep through the concrete. So I'll have to get those figured out. The flow rate ended up looking good. Biggest leak I had was just around that front edge and that top waterfall around that lip, but it was nothing too crazy. Ended up just getting some Flex Seal that fixed most of it. Have a little more tinkering to do, but here's what the final product ended up looking like. Well, that's a wrap on this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and here's a couple more videos that I think you'll enjoy.